I am not able to see the chat in my screen right now. So if you do have a question, you put it in, and I don't respond to it, it's just because I can't see your question. So if you want to, I don't know if Kate, if you want to have people unmute themselves or if somebody from ICF
Yeah,
wants to
I
monitor the
think,
chat.
Alfredo, if you wanna monitor the chat, just have that chat pop up out. Um, I think we should be good there.
I can definitely do that. I will monitor the
Perfect.
chat, and if anything comes up, Crystal, I will let you know.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so thank you everyone for taking some time out of your day to come to this virtual outreach event for the Gas Emerging Technologies program. My name is Crystal. I will go into my bio in a couple of slides here. And this is a research project update for a water heating project that we completed in the program last year. So what we're going to go over are the goals that we had in the project, the outline of the tasks in the project, the findings that we had in each task, and then we'll have some time for Q&A, and then we have information on our next outreach event in July. So I am Crystal Malian. I am a project manager at Linkus Inc. We are a subcontractor to ICF. ICF runs the statewide Gas Emerging Technologies program for SoCalGas. My background is in mechanical engineering. I have worked in the energy efficiency field with Linkus for a little over 10 years. I have done a wide breadth of things, including technical reviews, process improvement reviews. I worked on electric emerging technology at SoCal Edison for a while, and now I am working on gas emerging technologies. So this is an overview of the Gas Emerging Technologies program, and Alfredo or Stephen, feel free to hop in if I forget anything. So this program is a statewide program. It's the first time that we have had statewide emerging technologies programs. It gets funding from Southern California Gas, Pacific Gas and Electric, and San Diego Gas and Electric. So all that money goes into one pot, and then there's a statewide electric program and a statewide gas program. So this is the statewide gas program. It represents 11 million natural gas customers in California because the money comes from a surcharge that is paid on the gas bills that funds this program and other EE programs. The program was launched in late 2021, and our research timeline for this program is from 2022 until the end of next year in 2024. Anything you want to add, Alfredo or Stephen, to that?
No, I don't. Stephen, do you?
No, I don't either.
Okay, great. So we'll move on. Okay, so today we're going to talk about our very first project that we completed last year. The name of the project was to research and analyze water heating technology market and the current trends. Our main goal was to gather program participation and market data on energy efficient water heating technologies, as well as emerging water heating technologies, to provide an understanding of the uptake of those technologies and the drivers and barriers for the different technologies. In this project, we were focused on existing technologies that have a measure package and an incentive that were already offered. We have a parallel project that we will talk about in July that was focused on emerging technologies that did not have a measure package. So just again, this is a project focused on things that already have measure packages and incentives available. So the outline of the project, as I said, this project was done in parallel with another one on emerging water heating technologies. So they have some related tasks that I'm showing there. This project, number one, created what we called a water heating technology table, which was an expansion of our existing technology priority map, which we would call a TPM. The water heating technology table was then used in our other water heating project to do some prioritization. So we will talk about that at our July meeting when we talk about that second project. So I won't be talking about the water heating technology table today. After we did that, we interviewed some subject matter experts. If I say the word SME, that is a subject matter expert. We did 16 interviews of subject matter experts across both of these projects, and the results were combined and analyzed. After the SME interviews were done, we looked at CEDAR's data to see the participation trends in water heating in our task 4. Then we had some conversations with some SoCalGas program staff and a couple of contractors who were part of our subject matter expert interviews. And we did some additional analysis on AQMD standards, Energy Star, and incentives to try and understand the trends that we saw. In task 6, we looked at the historical trends from CEDARS, and we compared that with the CPUC's 2021 potential and goals study. And in task 7, we selected 5 measures that we thought had an opportunity to improve their participation. And we did some deeper analysis to see what customer costs, simple payback, and cost effectiveness values would look like at different incentive levels for those 5 measures. So now I'm going to go through the findings that we had in specific tasks. So again, we're going to discuss the results from the water heating technology table during the presentation for the second project in July. So the first thing we're going to go over are the findings from the subject matter expert interviews. We interviewed water heating experts to gather current market information about existing high efficiency and emerging high efficiency water heaters. We recruited them from the Hot Water Forum's contact list from 2022, the list of midstream water heating participating distributors, from South Coast AQMD's list of certified units for a couple of their rules, and through some previous relationships that we had through Linkus and ICF. When the task was finished, we interviewed a total of 16 different people. You can see the breakdown of the type of experts. So we had manufacturers, what we would call a technical expert, installers or contractors, and technology distributors. We asked each one of those people 32 questions, and they answered with a 1 to 5 answer. And those were split between drivers for high efficiency water heating and barriers for high efficiency water heating. So there were 16 for drivers and 16 for barriers. The key findings that we found from those interviews were these top 3 barriers and top 3 drivers. The top 3 barriers were high initial costs of the high efficiency equipment, no surprise there. A lack of awareness by customers and the installers about the high efficiency equipment and the benefits of the high efficiency equipment, and a lack of trained installer and maintenance personnel for the equipment. This was combined with emerging technologies. So some of the training has to do with the emerging technologies, but it's still applicable to some of our higher efficiency existing technologies. The drivers for participation of these technologies are independent verification of performance, which means some outside entity is verified that this technology performs as it says it does on their marketing materials. If the technology does in fact perform better than the incumbent, that is a driver. And then if it helps a building comply with environmental compliance, that is also a driver. So the AQMD regulations that we'll get into is an example of an environmental compliance that it acts as a driver. In the next tasks, we looked at the CEDARS data from 2017 to 2021 to look at participation trends in water heating. If you don't know what I mean when I say CEDARS, what that is all of the program administrators of energy efficiency incentives have to submit all of their energy savings claims data to the CPUC at the end of every year. And that's reporting system is called CEDARS. And what we did was we downloaded the statewide savings claims for all of the program administrators from 2017 to 2021. We mapped each measure ID or measure code in the data for the water heating end use to a generic measure description. And we grouped condensing efficiencies and non-condensing efficiencies separately. So if there were two measures for commercial boilers, one was 80% efficient and the other was 84% efficient, we would group those both together and we'd call it a commercial non-condensing boiler. Likewise, if the boiler was a condensing efficiency, then we, even if it was like a 93% and a 96% efficiency, we would group all of those together as a condensing efficiency commercial boiler. The reason we did that was because we wanted to look at how well the condensing efficiency products were performing as far as participation compared to the non-condensing products. The chart on the right hand of the slide shows the first year net therms for all water heating measures in blue. And that is looking at the left-hand side axis. And in orange is the approximate number of installations of water heating measures. And that is on the right-hand side axis. We approximated the number of installations by counting the number of claim rows that were in the CEDARS data. That's not a perfect way to do it, but it is the best way that we found to do it. We basically assume that if you had a single boiler, and boilers will be counted by their kBTU. So if you have a 300 kBTU boiler you're putting in, you're going to claim 300 units. So counting units wouldn't get us number of installations, but for that 300 kBTU boiler, you would only have one row. There could be situations where you might have installed two of those boilers and you might have just claimed one row with 600 kBTU. So that's where we would see that as a single boiler where you're actually installed two. We didn't have any information on how often that happened. So this was, again, our best approximation of the number of installations. This chart is only showing the results for single-family residential, multifamily residential, and commercial. We are not showing any industrial or agricultural savings on this chart. We broke this data down later on to find out what measures were very successful in their participation trends and what measures could improve, since the GET program also wants to increase participation of gas measures. So the three biggest successes were residential tankless condensing water heaters, commercial tankless condensing water heaters, and commercial tankless non-condensing water heaters. All three of these are more expensive than their non-condensing or their storage water heater counterparts. And if you remember from the last slide, cost was noted as one of the most important and highest barriers from our subject matter expert interviews. So we'll get into that a little bit later. The 5 measures that we selected, which we thought had an opportunity to increase their participation, were domestic hot water loop temperature controller, the solar thermal water heating in residential and multifamily and commercial boilers, and commercial pool heaters. So we'll talk about those opportunities in a few slides. Right now, we're going to go into some different market segments and dive a little deeper into the trends. So we looked at the overall data and then we chopped it up into single family, multifamily, and commercial. And we did a deeper dive on the participation trends in each one of those sectors. This slide is showing the details for single family. The orange line in the chart is for tankless condensing water heaters. The gray line is for storage non-condensing water heaters. The blue is for tankless non-condensing, and the yellow line is for condensing storage. And you can see the yellow line has 0 installations. So that essentially means there are no condensing storage water heaters installed in single family homes that we have incentives for. You can see from that chart very clearly that the tankless condensing water heaters outperform all of the others by far. Condensing efficiency products cost more than their non-condensing counterparts, and tankless tend to cost more than storage. So that was surprising to us because the top barrier was the cost. What we think is that the incentives offered by SoCalGas played a part in the high participation of those water heaters. We spoke to a couple of the SoCalGas program managers in residential, and they informed us that sometime between 2017 and 2021, there was an online platform launched, which makes it easier to apply for an incentive. They couldn't give us the exact year it was launched, so I couldn't tell you on that chart when that happened. It could have been after 2019 when we start to see that thing spike. They also told us that in 2020, the incentive for those water heaters included a kicker. So in some cases, the total cost of the water heater would be covered by the incentive, and the customer would only need to pay for the installation labor. And a kicker, if you don't know, that just means there's an additional incentive for a certain period of time for a measure. So if the normal incentive was $800, the gas company might offer an additional $300 incentive for Q4 because they want to increase their participation. We also did some digging and found that the air quality management rules limit the number of qualified storage water heaters. So there's 2 AQMD rules in South Coast Air Quality Management District that limit the NOx emissions from tankless water heaters or storage water heaters. The rules are split by the KBTU of the water heater. So there's one rule for water heaters under 75 KBTU, and there's a separate rule for water heaters above 75 KBTU. So for a water heater to be installed in California in certain air quality management districts, it has to meet those AQMD rules. And there are a number of air quality management districts or air pollution control districts that exist in California. The ones that have the most population, they all have similar rules limiting the NOx emissions. So we only looked at the South Coast Air Quality Management District rules because what we were told by some experts is South Coast AQMD leads the way, and then many other AQMDs will adopt what they have already adopted. So the air quality management districts in the areas where there's San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, San Diego, all of those have the same NOx emissions. So for a water heater to be sold in those areas, which is most of California, they have to be on those qualified lists. And then in order for them to qualify for an energy efficiency incentive, they also need to be on the Energy Star qualified products list. So they have to meet those 2 criteria. What we found is that there's 3 times more tankless water heaters on both lists than there are storage water heaters. So we believe that this lesser number of qualified storage water heaters on the AQMD list leads to the lower participation of the storage water heaters. This is the first time that we noticed that a different law not related to efficiency has an impact on the participation of a measure. And in the GET program, that's something that we're keeping in mind for future technologies and future studies. The next market segment that we looked at was multifamily. We looked at water heaters and boilers, and we also looked at controls. This slide is only showing the results for the water heaters and the boilers. The orange line on the chart is, again, a condensing efficiency. Condensing efficiency boilers are on the orange line, and they out-participate the non-condensing boilers on the blue line. However, we did see that non-condensing water heaters sometimes out-participate the condensing water heaters, as you can see when the gray line is higher than the yellow line. That's when the non-condensing water heaters are out-participating the condensing ones. Overall, though, there is a decline in boiler and water heater participation in the multifamily programs from 2017 to 2021. Some of this decline could be attributed to the COVID-19 impacts. And it's important to note that most of the savings in the multifamily sector come from two SoCalGas programs you can see in that chart. That were combined together into a single program in 2019. So we spoke to some of the SoCalGas program staff, and they communicated to us that multifamily projects have some unique challenges when replacing boilers. Since boiler replacements are capital investments, there's usually multiple parties at the multifamily site that need to understand the project, and they need to be convinced of the energy savings that's going to happen with the project and the value of replacing with high efficiency water heaters or boilers. The first party is the on-site property manager. The second party is the property owner, and a potential third party is if there's a corporate property management company who needs to be convinced. All of these parties are usually non-technical, and they need assistance in evaluating the different boiler and water heater options. And they sometimes also feel daunted by the task of interviewing and hiring contractors to do this work. They often will have a maintenance person or a maintenance contractor, but it's sometimes a different thing hiring a contractor to do a complete boiler or water heating system replacement. So those program folks suggested that a marketplace with some boiler or water heater contractors, similar to SCE's solar marketplace, might be helpful to overcome this barrier where the site contacts need some technical assistance and they need to be able to hire a contractor and feel like they're going to get quality work out of that contractor. Now we're going to move on to the multifamily controls. The orange line in the chart is for demand control recirculation, which puts a variable speed drive on the recirculation pump that slows it down. The gray line is for a domestic hot water loop temperature controller that changes the set point temperature in the hot water supply and reduces it during periods of low demand. And the blue line is called a dual set point temperature controller, which reduces the water heating set point when you have a combined space and water heating system. When you have a combined system, you don't need water that's as hot in the summer when you don't need space heating. And so that reduces the temperature when you don't need that space heating. The orange and gray lines are on the left-hand axis, and the blue line is on the right-hand axis. You can see that domestic hot water loop temperature controllers have only seen participation in 2020 and 2021, but the participation has gone up over those 2 years. And while the participation of the demand control recirculation has declined from 2017 to 2021. The dual set point temperature controller has only seen participation in 2021, but it has seen very little participation. So just note that the blue line is on the right-hand axis there, and so its max therms is 160 compared to the gray line, which is 350,000 therms. So they are not the same amount of therms, even though it might look like it. Since the controlled trends were all over the place, we also reached out to the SoCalGas program managers and a couple of contractors from our previous subject matter expert interviews to gain some more insight. SoCalGas noted to us that demand control, recirculation, and domestic hot water loop temperature controller are competing measures. They thought there would be some opportunity to increase the loop temperature controller with some additional marketing. The two contractors that we spoke to also thought that marketing could increase participation for all controls, and they additionally suggested some more workforce education and training. Both of them specifically noted that many controls manufacturers will install a temperature controller, but they don't provide service or customer support. So when the customer has an issue, they'll call the normal plumber who doesn't know how the controls work and simply bypasses or unplugs them. So this points to a barrier that we found in our interviews of the need for some additional workforce education and training. And it also points to a need to select qualified contractors or controls manufacturers to install these controls measures, and training for customers to know who's the appropriate person or entity to call when they have an issue so that their plumber doesn't bypass the controls that they paid for to save energy. The last segment we looked at are the trends in the commercial water heating sector. You can again see on the graph, the orange line is condensing. It is a condensing tankless water heater, which has outparticipated condensing storage water heaters that are on the yellow line. The green line is condensing boilers, which outparticipates the blue line, which is non-condensing boilers. And I'm sorry, that's the light blue line. The dark blue line is tankless, non-condensing water heaters, which outparticipates storage non-condensing water heaters on the gray line. The gray line is showing 0 installations. This is the opposite of what we saw in single family. Single family, we saw 0 participation for condensing storage water heaters. In commercial, we see storage water heater participation is still has good performance compared to tankless. We also can see that the overall participation of water heaters in the commercial sector has declined over time. This could be due to COVID-19 impacts, but it could also be due to the launch of the statewide midstream water heating program in 2019. When that program launched, what we can tell is that there were measures that existed in core programs that were pulled into midstream, that midstream program, and it only had a year to get going before the COVID-19 lockdowns happened. So that could have hindered some of the participation in that program. It would be interesting to see what the CEDARS data shows for 2022 when we start to see things start to reopen. So this is a summary of the overall results that I just went through on those last 4 slides when we did our deeper dive. The first is that the AQMD ultra-low NOx requirements seem to limit participation of the storage water heaters. As I said before, the water heaters have to be on the AQMD list to be sold in California to begin with, and they have to be on Energy Star qualified products list to be eligible for incentives. We compared the AQMD lists and Energy Star for residential water heaters, which are under 75 kBTU, and found that only 41 storage water heaters are on both lists, while there's 147 tankless water heaters on both lists. So we think this is another reason that tankless outparticipates storage in the single family residential market. We tried to look at this for commercial products, but we couldn't do that within our budget limits because storage water heaters, tankless water heaters, and boilers for commercial fall under the same AQMD regulation because they're all higher than 75 kBTU. So there were just too many of them to look at. This is an impactful finding again because it's the first time that I've seen where we can see a non-energy efficiency regulation impact the participation of an energy efficiency measure. In the past, we can always see Title 24 regulations or federal regulations impact participation, but those are all energy efficiency related regulations and laws. Whereas AQMD has nothing to do with the efficiency, it's all only about the emissions from the unit. So in the GET program, we've taken that finding and we're making sure that when we look at new technologies, we're looking at other regulations besides energy efficiency that could impact the viability of measures. The next finding is that tankless and condensing water heaters have seen higher participation in the last 5 years, and especially in the last 2 years in single family, even though the costs of those units are higher than their non-condensing or storage counterparts. We looked into the CEDARS data to see the incentive levels for the different tankless and storage and condensing and non-condensing water heaters. And we looked at measure packages to compare the incentive levels that we saw in CEDARS to the measure costs. What we thought was that perhaps the incentive levels for the condensing tankless products were so high that when you account for the rebate, those products are cheaper. However, when we did that analysis, that didn't appear to be the case. Over time, what we found was it looked like the average cost for tankless and condensing products go up from 2017 to 2021. And the rebate does go up, but even when you account for the rebate, the condensing tankless products are still more expensive. So we think it's unlikely that the incentive is the only reason customers choose tankless condensing water heaters. We think there's other factors, including the AQMD, which we talked about, including decreased size of equipment when you have a tankless water heater, which frees up space in your garage or mechanical room, and also the perception that tankless water heaters provide endless hot water. We also received some feedback from a contractor during one of our interviews that venting requirements for a tankless water heaters could cause you to have less installation cost at particular sites, which would make those more attractive. So he basically told us, depending on the multifamily site that you're working with and where the water heaters are currently located and what kind of ducting they have, tankless might be a cheaper installation than a storage. So there are also some site-specific things that could affect which one a customer would choose. The major takeaway from all of this, though, is that the cost of a technology is not an insurmountable barrier, because we can see from the data that the cost barrier noted by the subject matter expert interviews has been seemingly overcome in single-family residential. So in our GET projects, we're now making sure that we document opportunities and challenges, as well as potential solutions for challenges for our measures, so that this information can be passed on to programs teams later on, and they can leverage that to overcome cost barriers, because oftentimes we have high costs for emerging technologies. The last two findings are related to controls. We found that controls measures typically need support from workforce education and training so that the savings persist over time and the measures are not bypassed. We also think it would be wise to educate customers about how they can get proper service for their controls so they don't lose the energy savings that they paid for. While we were looking at controls, we found a few gaps in measure packages. One is a smart pump for single family and multifamily residential that only has electric savings in the measure package. It does not have gas savings. So we are currently conducting a field study on this product to close that gap and get those gas savings. Another gap we found was that there are some continuous monitoring control systems out there that could increase the persistence of the controls measures since it gives real-time feedback to the customer. And those that persistence of savings isn't accounted for that we can see in any measure package right now. So our last task was to look at those 5 measures where we had opportunities to increase participation and do some additional analysis on those. So those 5 measures were commercial pool or spa heaters, central hot water boilers in multifamily, domestic hot water loop temperature controllers, and single family and multifamily solar thermal water heaters. What we did after we selected those 5 is we chose some different incentive levels and we ran that through the CET to find the TRCs, TSBs, and then we calculated the customer's simple payback at those different incentive levels. We use the measure costs from the work paper to determine those payback amounts. The lowest incentive level for all of these is $0. That's just to show us what's the maximum TRC that could be for any given measure. The middle incentives are either what was offered in the programs in 2022 when this project was completed, or if there was no incentive for a measure, we put it at about 50% of the measure cost. The highest incentive that you'll see there is 100% of the measure cost, and we did that to show the minimum TRC and the maximum customer payback. So we just wanted to get a range, and then we wanted to see what the actuals or the 50% level was. Note in this chart that the lowest simple payback value corresponds to the highest incentive value. So in the first row, the simple payback of 4 years corresponds to the $5.80 incentive. The simple payback of 10.2 years corresponds to no incentive. So there's 2 key findings we wanted to highlight from this. The first is that the tier 1 pool and spa heater has a payback that exceeds the equipment life of 5 years at its current incentive level. And it just barely breaks even when you would offer an incentive at 100% of the measure cost. However, the tier 2 pool heater has a simple payback between 2.2 and 4.4 years, making this measure potentially more attractive. This shows that a tier 1 level heater probably needs to be combined with some other measures to be attractive. The second finding is that those 2 next measures that are multifamily specific have paybacks of less than 5 years for the controller and less than 1 year for the hot water boiler, even without incentives. The payback for the domestic hot water loop temperature controller is between 3.3 years and 1 year at its current incentive level, and current would have been in 2022. It may have changed now. The central boiler is less than a year payback without incentives. However, if you recall, the multifamily participation is less than the commercial participation, even though the sizes of the systems are similar in multifamily and commercial from a KBTU rating standpoint. This further accentuates the need for some additional marketing in multifamily, for some additional workforce education and training, and some additional customer support for this sector. So in our program, we've taken this and we're incorporating it into our field studies in multifamily buildings so that when we do field studies, we have information on the challenges and opportunities for the measures when we're doing installations in multifamily buildings. Another thing that you can also see from this table is that solar thermal water heating has long paybacks and low TRC values. These systems were previously installed in the California Solar Incentives Program, which had its own calculator to determine incentives, whereas we have a measure package to do that. So they might have been similar calculation methodologies, but a different way of paying the incentives. And that program may have had some different cost effectiveness requirements. They would still be considered measures that ET would be interested in, since we don't have any participation in EE programs as of 2021 when we looked at all that data. But the TRCs are kind of low and lower than some other water heating ET measures that we've seen that we'll talk about in July. So they were not as high on our priority list. And contractors do have experience installing them in California because they were in that other program. So that's another reason they weren't as high on our final priority list. But we did look
Crystal,
at them. Yes.
there is a question in chat that just popped up.
Mhm.
Does the study include any electric water heater options?
No, we were focused on gas, so we did not look at electric at all.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so the last slide is just kind of an overall summary of our high-level project findings. Again, barriers are high costs, lack of awareness among customers about the benefits of high-efficiency products, and a lack of training of the workforce and of customers and decision makers. The drivers for high-efficiency water heating are when product performance is independently verified, when the product performance is better than incumbents, and when the products comply with environmental regulations, which is what we saw in the single family water heaters. The AQMD, oops, I'm sorry. Just trying to scroll my notes down. The AQMD ultra low NOx regulations limit the participation of single family storage water heaters. And this shows that non-energy efficiency regulations can affect participation of energy efficiency measures. The next finding is there's high participation of tankless condensing water heaters across single family, multifamily, and commercial, despite the higher cost for those units, which shows that the cost barrier can be overcome. And lastly, we have a few gaps in water heating controls, one of which we are working to fill right now with that smart pump, and that the multifamily segment has less participation and may need some additional marketing and education for customers and training for the installers and maintenance contractors in that space. So I'll open it up for Q&A if you guys have any questions, and want to note that our next virtual outreach event will be on July 18th at the same time. And we will be talking about the second project I mentioned, which was focusing on emerging water heating technologies. And then I guess we also need to let you all know that we have a electric emerging technology program that is similar to our gas program that is called CalNext. Their vision is to identify emerging electric technologies across 6 priority areas and bring them into the portfolios. So you can contact them if you have any questions at calnext.com. And then we have Alfredo's contact information here if you guys have any follow-up questions, but we have, I think, about 15 minutes for questions if anyone would like to ask anything. And again, I can't see the comments still. I would have to not show my screen. So if anyone has a question, Alfredo, if you could read it
Yeah,
to me.
they're typing. The question came in. Will
Okay.
you share the slides?
That is a question for you, Alfredo, I guess, where we can post these.
Yeah, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we can share these slides definitely. We can either post them probably on the webpage, or maybe we just reply to folks that attended.
Yeah, I think we can work as to whether it's easier just to do an email blast or to post it on the webpage.
Okay, but yes, we will share the slides. Probably look out for those probably by midday tomorrow. once we decide if it's easier to just do an email blast or post them on the webpage. Let's see. I don't see any other questions, but I'm just waiting to see if any pop up.
Yeah.
Another question came in, Crystal. Does the study include any electric water, any water heaters? I think that was the same question from before.
Yeah, it does not include electric water heaters. We
Okay.
are doing a project on some emerging technology gas water heaters where we are comparing that with the performance of an electric heat pump water heater.
Okay.
And then thanks for the presentation. When is the report to be published? When is the report going to be published? I think, Crystal, do you have timing on that? I think we're done with it, right?
We have completed it. I am not sure about, I think we have a question about where we can or should publish it. So I'm gonna have to punt that over to Steven, sorry.
Actually, I made fun of Alfredo. We're no, not on the timing. So we do know where we're going to post it. That it'll eventually end up on the new statewide ET website, cal-etp.com. We need to redact all the final reports or confirm redactions. So once we've done that, hopefully we can post it. So hopefully in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I'm thinking in the next few weeks we'll post it, and we can send out an email blast to the participants on here just to let them know it's available on the webpage.
Yeah, that would be great. And if you could, I can provide you with our subject matter experts emails as well, Alfredo, because they have also asked me for it.
Perfect. Yeah, just provide me with that, and as soon as we get it on the webpage in the next week or two, few weeks maybe, we'll definitely let stakeholders know so they can go and find the report.
Okay.
Great question. I don't see any other questions being typed out. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm happy to let folks have 10 minutes back.
Crystal, thank you
Yeah.
for the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Crystal. Great presentation.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming and participating. I appreciate it.
With
Thank
that,
you.
I think we're good to go. Thanks, everybody. Have a
All right.
wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.